You are listening to Book Clips, a mini podcast in which authors or narrators do readings from novels. Check out the show notes for the synopsis and buy links for this book.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne Blue and I'm here today to read to you from my tennis romance, Code of Conduct. This is the story of Viva, who's a top 10 Australian tennis player, and Gabriela, who's a tennis official. I'm starting here at chapter 1. Viva's heart pounded in double time as she waited at the service line for the crowd to calm. If anything, the cacophony of applause and shouts grew louder. Quiet, please. The umpire's even tones cut through the din. Tiebreaker, 6-5 Jones. Genevieve Jones to serve. Viva drew a deep breath and let the tension drain from her shoulders. She twitched her toe into a position a centimetre behind the service line. The crowd's noise faded. There was nothing in her mind except the next point. She rocked back on her heel and flung the ball skywards. "Come on, Paige, show us what you've got!" The shouted encouragement for her opponent cut through Viva's concentration. Laughter rippled around centre court. Abort. She lowered her racket, caught the ball, and fought down her flash of anger as she waited once again for the crowd to settle. "Please do not call out when play is in progress." The umpire made a mark on the tablet in front of him. Viva spun away from the service line and nodded to the ball kid for a towel. New York's humidity made the racket slip in her hand like butter on a hot pan. She wiped her face, hands, and the racket handle. Staring down at the strings, she refocused her concentration and willed away the butterflies cartwheeling in her stomach. This moment, this point, set point. Nothing else mattered right now. Not her Grand Slam title defence, not the number 1 ranking she stood to gain if she succeeded. This point matters. Only this one. If she won this point, the match would go to 3 sets. She paced back to the service line, collecting and discarding balls from the ball kid. She bounced the ball once, twice, a third time. Her grip tightened on the racket. This point matters. Only this one. A 4th bounce and she prepared to swing. "Time violation. Warning, Miss Jones." She dropped the racket and swung around to face the umpire. He stared back impassively as if daring her to react. She closed her eyes for a second, biting back the hot words she wanted to say. She was maybe a few seconds over time. To call a violation was massively unfair. With a deep breath, she bent and picked up her racket. A quick glance at her peppy blonde opponent now taking pretend swings with the racket. Paige had a poor 3-set record, especially when she lost the 2nd set. Viva knew she could win the match, if it went to a 3rd set. And it was still set point to her. Viva wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her wristband. 2 bounces, the ball toss, the swing. Ace! Viva whirled around with a jubilant fist pump. "Second serve." "What?" Her eyes widened and she turned to the umpire. "Foot fault." The umpire leant forward and spoke into the microphone. "Miss Jones, a foot fault was called." The buzz of white noise in her head built to a crescendo. Viva pressed her lips tightly together and swallowed hard. She jerked around to face the lineswoman, who stared straight ahead, no expression on her face. Viva nodded, a jerky up and down, and walked back to the service line. 2 bounces of the ball, the toss, the swing. The softer serve kicked wide, and Paige returned it hard down the centre. For a moment they duelled back and forth before Paige sent a backhand winner down the line. 6-all. Viva now needed 2 straight points to win. She stalked back to her chair for the short break at the change of ends. A mouthful of sports drink, another of water. She wiped the handle of her racket and tested the string tension. The little routines calmed her momentarily, stilled her jiggling knee. She focused deep inside, trying in vain to block out the pounding music that played during the 2-minute breaks. Viva returned to the service line. Someone coughed in the crowd as she prepared to serve, and she paused and bounced the ball one more time. A clean serve down the centre line. Paige pushed it back short. Viva raced in and scooped the ball. It hit the net cord and for an agonising moment seemed to hang there before it fell back on Viva's side of the net. Damn, that was the worst luck, that was... No. She slammed a wall up against the negative thoughts. 7-6, Westermeyer. If Paige won this point, she would win the match, and she now had 2 serves. Viva focused on her feet as she returned to the baseline, this time to receive. Paige took her time to serve, bouncing the ball many times, then a bad ball toss which she caught and regrouped. Viva bit her lip. The umpire should call a time violation. He should... She tamped down that line of thought. Focus. Paige's serve was soft, almost tentative. Viva was already in position, and her driving return clipped the baseline. 7-all. Yes! She jogged back to the baseline to receive and sent a cool glance at her opponent. Do your worst, Paige. Paige's next serve thundered down, hard and fast and unexpected. Viva lunged for it, and the ball glanced off the tip of her racket. A streak of pain shot into her wrist from the force, and she gasped as the joint was forced back. The racket fell to the ground. She bent to pick it up, gritting her teeth against her disappointment. Her wrist throbbed. It was now 8-7 and a second match point to Paige. But it was not over yet. After accepting a ball, she spun around to the service line and stared down the court as she drew a deep breath and blew it out slowly. She twitched her toe into position, the toe of her fluoro shoe behind the line. 2 bounces, a third for luck. Throw, swing. And the serve was good, she was sure it was, and... Foot fault. No! The shout erupted from her tight throat. Not again! No way! The racket trembled in her hand, and she clenched her fingers on the handle. A glance at the umpire's implacable face. No chance of an overrule. She swung around to face the lineswoman, who sat stony-faced on the chair, her neat brown hair as short and tightly controlled as the rest of her. She stared straight ahead, as if she were waiting for a bus. Viva glared up at the umpire. She's wrong! You can't let her get away with this! It's match point! A red haze built in her mind. She tightened her grip on the racket, consumed by the urge to smash it onto the court until it was broken beyond repair. Second serve. Viva tightened her lips so much that her teeth ground together. She nodded once, tightly, to the umpire, and stalked back to the service line. As she drew level with the lineswoman, she flicked her a contemptuous look. I will not forget this. The woman didn't flinch. Her sweat-damp hair clung limply to her forehead in the heat, but she stared straight ahead without reaction. With a final venomous glare in her direction, Viva took her place at the service line. She heaved a breath, trying to compose herself. This point matters. Only this one. The hyped-up crowd, now all cheering for the American, the heat and humidity of the afternoon, Paige bouncing lightly on her toes. They all receded, pushed back into a place where they were unimportant. The lineswoman's stony face intruded, and she, too, was dismissed from her mind. Focus. She accepted 3 balls, rejected 1. To lose the match on a penalty would be an unbearable indignity. Viva closed her eyes for a second, banishing the negative thoughts. Lose? No. She would win this. Her grip was firm on her racket, and conviction surged in her mind. She rocked back on her heel. The silence of the crowd was absolute. The ball kids as still as lampposts, the umpire poised in his chair. The lineswoman leant forward, hands on her knees, gaze locked on the service line. Second service, last chance. Viva tossed, swung, and smashed the ball true in the centre of the racket. It shot like a rocket over the net. Out! The call was loud and sure from the linesman at the far end of the court. No! She couldn't suppress the cry. Not the victory shout she had imagined, more a forlorn little sob of shattered dreams. She had lost. Lost in the quarter-finals, in the defence of her US Open title. Her legs were suddenly as weak as jelly, and she sank to her haunches on court, her head bowed over the handle of her racket. Soon she would have to face her coach Deepak and the press, but for one private moment she let her misery consume her. Only for a second. Arranging her face into a wry smile of congratulation, she sprang to her feet and walked to the net. Paige bounded up, elation scrawled over her face. Around them, the crowd surged to their feet and the stadium rang with their cheers and applause. For Paige, not for her. Well done, Paige, very well deserved. She hugged her opponent around her sweaty shoulders before walking to her chair. A quick shake of the umpire's hand, and she swiftly gathered her things and stuffed them into her bag. Get off court. The urge to flee was overwhelming. A long shower, that was what she wanted, so that the streaming water would hide her tears. She raised a hand to the crowd and trudged to the exit. The cacophony of cheers for the winner followed her out. Again, I am Cheyenne Blue, and that was me reading from Code of Conduct.
You have been listening to Book Clips. Check out the show notes for the synopsis and buy links for this book. If you are interested in showcasing your novel, then check out the show notes for more information.